Trying to get a US green card can feel, well, super complicated, right? Like a giant puzzle with a million pieces. But what if you had a map? That's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to take this whole complex process and lay it out like a clear, simple roadmap. So let's just jump right in. So first things first, what are the main ways you can actually get a green card? I mean, how do you even get there? Turns out everyone's headed to the same destination, but there are a few totally different roads you can take. And figuring out which road is yours, that is the absolute first step. And here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with the big picture. Then we'll dive deep into the three main routes: family, employment, and investor. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at the common forms and final steps that kind of pull everything together. All right, let's start with the basics. What even is a green card? The official name is actually Form I-551, but what it really is, it's your golden ticket. It's the official document that says you can live and work permanently anywhere you want in the United States. It's what makes you a lawful permanent resident. Basically, there are three main highways to get one. You can be sponsored by a family member, sponsored by an employer, or you can qualify as an investor. We're going to break down each one of these journeys, and we'll start with the one most people take. Okay, first up, the family-based path. This is, by far, the most common journey. The vast majority of people get their green cards this way, and it all kicks off with a family member who's either a U.S. citizen or already a permanent resident stepping up to be your sponsor. Think of this journey in four big stages. First, your sponsor files a petition. That's Form I-130, which basically just proves to the government that you're actually related. Then, and this can be a big one, there's the wait. After the wait, you get to the actual application. And finally, there's the final review and, hopefully, approval. Now let's talk about that waiting period, because it's a really big deal. It all depends on who you are. If you're an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, we're talking spouse, a young unmarried child, or parent, then good news. There's no line for you. A visa is always ready. But for everybody else, you're in what's called a preference category, and you have to get in line and wait for your turn. You track your spot using something called the Visa Bulletin, which comes out every month. Okay, so once it's your turn and a visa is available, you come to a major fork in the road. And what decides which way you go? Simple. Where you are physically located. If you're already inside the U.S., you'll file a Form I-485 to adjust your status. But if you're outside the U.S., you'll do something called consular processing with a different form, the DS-260, at a U.S. embassy. Now remember the split, because you're going to see it pop up again. All right, let's switch gears and look at our next big route, the employment-based path. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Here, your journey doesn't start with family. It starts with a U.S. employer who wants to hire you and sponsor you for a green card. So the first few steps here look a little different. A lot of the time, the employer has to go through this whole process called a perm labor certification. It's where they prove to the government that they couldn't find a qualified U.S. worker for the job. Once that's done, then they file the main petition for you, the Form I-140. And after that, sound familiar? You might have to wait in line again for a visa number, just like in the family-based system. And see, here's that pattern I told you about. As soon as your visa number is ready, you are right back at that same fork in the road. Inside the U.S., you file the I-485. Outside the U.S., you file the DS-260. The end of the journey looks exactly the same. Okay, on to our third and, let's say, most specialized route. This is the EB-5 Investor Program. This path is a whole different ballgame. It's for people who are willing to invest a pretty big chunk of money into a U.S. business. And that business has to create jobs for U.S. workers. The timeline here is really unique. It starts with the investor filing a petition, the I-526. But here's the twist. When it's approved, you don't get a regular permanent green card. Nope, you get a conditional one, which is only good for 2 years. Then, before those 2 years are up, you have to file another form, the I-829, to prove that your investment actually created the jobs you promised. Only after that is approved do you finally get the permanent green card. So yeah, this idea of a conditional green card is the key thing to understand here. You can think of it like a 2-year trial period. The government is basically saying, okay, we like your business plan, we'll give you a temporary green card, now go prove you can actually do what you said you would. It's this extra show-me step that really sets the investor path apart from the others. All right, we've driven down all three of the main highways. So now let's pull over for a second and look at the legend on our map. The common forms and final checkpoints that pretty much everyone has to deal with, no matter which road they started on.
This is kind of like the standard toolkit for every applicant. You've got your two main application forms, the I-485 for inside the US and the DS-260 for outside. But then there are these other key pieces, like the I-864, which is a promise of financial support from your sponsor, and the I-693, which is for your medical exam. And hey, you can even apply for temporary work and travel permits while your case is pending. These are the nuts and bolts that get you across the finish line.
And you know what? It doesn't matter how you started this whole journey, whether it was with family, a job, or an investment, it all comes down to the same final steps. You'll go to a biometrics appointment for fingerprints and a photo. You'll have an interview with an immigration officer, and then hopefully you get that approval. The destination for every single path is the same, that official green card, Form I-551. So, there you have it. The road to a green card isn't just one straight line. It's more like a whole network of different roads that all have these shared checkpoints along the way. Which kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. What's the most critical part of the whole journey for making sure you succeed? Is it getting that first petition right? Is it surviving the long wait? Or is it nailing the final application? Figuring that out, well, that might be the most important part of reading this map.